Welcome to the 5th episode of the 2nd season of Heart to Heart with Michael, a program for the bereaved community. Our purpose is to empower our community with resources, support, and advocacy information. This season's theme, a celebration of life, and we feel fortunate to have Anna Jaworski on the program today. Today's show is called Loving Mom, Continuing the Stories. Anna Jaworski is the host of Heart to Heart with Anna, which is the only long-term podcast for the congenital heart defect community. She is also the executive producer of Heart to Heart with Michael and the president of Hearts Unite the Globe, a nonprofit organization for the congenital heart defect community. Anna's son, Alexander, was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, a serious congenital heart defect. This led Anna to becoming an author, creating a website, doing some radio shows to raise awareness of congenital heart defects, and then creating a podcast called Heart to Heart with Anna. Anna is also mother to Joseph, who is engaged to Ashley Barr. Anna is looking forward to the two of them getting married and giving her finally some grandchildren. Anna has been married to Frank Jaworski for almost 32 years, and today Anna will talk to us about her mother, Carol Daigneault, who just passed away on February 16th, 2018. Anna, welcome to our program.
Thank you, Michael. I'm happy to be here.
Tell us about your mom.
Well, my mother was an avid crocheter, and she never let her hands stay still. If she wasn't making a baby blanket for the Boys and Girls Club, she was making something for some charity that she had adopted, or she was embroidering or knitting. And she used to say that it was keeping her hands busy that is what kept her sane. Mom loved her family. Family was everything to her. As a child who had suffered from multiple divorces, she determined that she was not going to let that happen to her family. And so she worked really, really hard to be the best mother and wife she could be. And she did keep our family together for 40 years. And then my parents got divorced. But instead of feeling sorry for herself, she just kept working. She kept crocheting. She kept knitting. When her sister's husband died, she moved from Texas to Georgia. She sold her house and helped her sister get all of her affairs in order. And then finally, when she had helped her sister as much as she could, she called me. And she said, "Anna, I'm ready to come home." And the next thing I knew, I was preparing my little house in the country for my mother. I was planting gardenias in the garden, and I was getting a porch made for her because I knew she would want to sit outside in the sunshine because I knew she missed that. And I was going to Georgia to pick my mother up and bring her back to Texas. And I'm so thankful that she did come home. And we had 2 years and 7 months with her before she passed away.
What kind of activities did you share with her?
Well, believe it or not, I'm the one who taught her how to crochet. Usually it's the other way around, you know.
I would think, yeah.
Usually it's your mom who teaches you. And she did teach me how to embroider. And she taught me how to knit when I was really young. And it was so funny because she taught me how to knit. And then she told me that she didn't like knitting. And so because she said that, I didn't think I liked knitting either. Isn't that funny? But I learned how to crochet when she took me to visit a friend of hers, and her friend was sitting there making a granny square afghan, and I was fascinated. I was 10 years old, and she saw me watching her every move, and she said, "Would you like me to teach you how to do this?" So I said, "Sure," and the next thing I knew, I was making a granny square afghan myself, and in fact, I still have that afghan. I was getting ready to throw it away when Frank and I were dating, and I told him the story of how I made that afghan, and he wouldn't let me throw it away. He made me give it to him, and we still have it. 32 years later, we still have it.
That's very sweet of him, by the way.
I know, he's such a sweet guy. But yeah, so
you don't always see that kind of sentimentality. But
no,
really right
you
there.
don't. You don't. But that afghan made me into a crocheter. And my mother would watch me crocheting, and so finally I started to give classes on how to crochet, and my mother watched me teach her left-handed sister how to crochet. And she said, "Well, if Aunt Paula can learn how to do this, so can I." And so the three of us sat down together, and we all crocheted, and I think my mom was probably my most prolific student because once she knew how to crochet, there was no stopping her. But that wasn't the only thing we did. My mother loved bingo, and so did my Aunt Paula and my Aunt Gila. And whenever we were together, we would all go to play bingo together. She loved the racetrack, which was not something that I loved, but I went with her several times to see the horses race. She loved that. She just loved nature.
Yeah, I got to tell you, in my life, I've been to the horses, I think once, maybe twice. It really is kind of exciting, and you'd be surprised the kind of people you see there. It's not like in the movies.
That's true. That's true. It's not like at the movies. There, yeah, it is definitely everyday people. But I think the one thing that my mom and I did forever, I mean, I never remember us not doing this, was playing games. My mother loved to play games. She taught us how to play Monopoly and Sorry, Parcheesi. We loved to play card games, all kinds of card games. And when I was a little girl, she would also take us outside, and we grew up in New Jersey where they have sidewalks, unlike here in Texas where we don't have sidewalks very much. But in New Jersey, my mother taught us how to use chalk and make a hopscotch board. And then we played hopscotch, and one time she was telling my sister that she played hopscotch with us so much that she had blisters on the bottom of her feet.
That's good parenting.
I know, I'm telling you. And so when she moved back to Texas, she didn't have that many friends. She moved back to the town near where I live. And so I started a game night. I would either do games at night or in the afternoon and invite all my friends. And so every month I would have different people coming to my house, mostly to meet Mom, because they knew I was doing this for her. And I taught her how to play a new game called Apples to Apples and another game called Catchphrase. And those were probably the most popular games that we played the last couple of years she was here.
See, now I'm stuck on Sorry. That's the game I played as a kid. Nobody in the family ever wanted to play Sorry with me. And they all go, Sorry. And that's like my favorite game. It was. I think it's just the slide. I don't know. But
we love Sorry.
Totally with you on that.
We play a lot of Sorry. My mom also loved Pinochle, but you have to have 4 people who all know how to play Pinochle. So that was a little bit harder around here.
You know, I think it's great. I think that you had that really warm relationship. That it looks like your mother wasn't afraid to sort of like get down and be with the kids from a very early age.
You don't see moms doing that so much anymore.
I know. And some, my parents were always very, very busy. My mom worked. My father worked very, very hard. So, when my father would even go outside and play catch, we played behind the house so the neighbors wouldn't see it.
It was very special. She just thrilled in being a mother.
How was her dying? How did that affect your relationship with your sister?
Well, my sister and I had grown apart over the years, but we still always loved each other. And I think in caring for Mom in her final days, it just brought us much, much closer together. We were in complete unity about how we wanted Mom to be cared for, because ever since we were little girls, Mom told us how she wanted to go. She said she wanted to go quickly, she wanted to go in her sleep, and she didn't want to have any pain. So when it came time for making decisions, Chrissy and I knew exactly what we needed to do.
It's interesting you say that, because my mother also, since she was very, very young, my mother was talking about the end, and she'd always say, do it like the Eskimos. Just put me on an ice floe. As long as I have a television set, I'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we had the television set going. Mom always had the TV on, even if she wasn't watching it. I think she liked having the noise in the background. And so when we brought her home with hospice, that was one of the first things that we did, make sure the television was on the channel that she liked. Home Tonight Forever by the Baby Blue Sound Collective. I think what I love so much about this CD is that some of the songs were inspired by the patients.
Many listeners will understand many of the different songs and what they've been inspired by. Our new album will be available on iTunes, Amazon.com, Spotify.
I love the fact that the proceeds from this CD are actually going to help those with congenital heart defects.
Enjoy the music.
Home Tonight Forever. You are listening to Heart to Heart with Michael. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on Michael's program, please email him at michael@hearttoheartwithmichael.com. Now, back to our program.
Anna, what's your fondest memory of your mother?
When I think back to when I was a little girl, it took Mom a while to get pregnant with me, and I have a sister who's 2.5 years younger than I am. And my earliest memories all deal with my little sister. So I remember my mom changing my little sister on the couch. And so she had this little setup where she had Chrissy on blankets, and she had this little cabinet right next to the couch. We called it a dough box. I don't know why. I'm sure there's some antique where, people used to let the dough rise or something, and they called it a dough box. But anyway, Mom always called it a dough box. And inside the dough box were the diapers, the baby powder, the Vaseline, and the diaper pins. If you remember way back when, we used to have diaper pins. And so it was my job as the big sister to go into the dough box and to get the diaper and the powder and everything that Mom needed. And I remember opening the little door and reaching my hand in and getting the soft diaper and handing it to my mother and making the baby smile and laugh while Mom was changing her. And so I think some of my fondest memories deal with Mom bringing the baby home and us being a real family and just all the times that we spent together. My mom liked to cook, and so we spent a lot of time in the kitchen. And when I was quite a bit older, when I was, in early elementary school, my mother knew that I loved puzzles. So she and Dad bought me these puzzles that you used to get in these cylindrical canisters. I don't know if you remember those back in the 1970s, but they had all different kinds of scenes on them. And so there was this big cylinder, and I would dump the puzzle pieces on the floor, and the kitchen would smell wonderful because Mom was cooking, and Chrissy would be playing something else on the floor, and I would be there making my puzzles. And it was just a very peaceful, kind of idyllic moment.
It's interesting, the memories, because they seem to relate very much to your sister. It's more of a total family picture than something specific about you and Mom, which I find very interesting. It means that there's a totality of the family, that you don't really tangle everybody out into individuals. And it's a really kind of idyllic picture.
Yeah, it really is. I remember we had a downstairs bathroom. We had a 2-story house, and downstairs we had a bathroom with an old-fashioned bathtub. And Mom would give us a bath, and the bathroom was right off of the kitchen. And I remember my sister and me bringing our Barbie dolls into the bathroom, and we had beach day in the bathtub. And Mom would wash our hair and wash us, and we would wash our Barbie dolls at the same time, and it was beach time. My mom was really, really good at trying to make things fun, even mundane things like bath time. She could make it fun for us.
Yeah, like I said before, I'm getting the impression of someone who is very easily engaged with the kids at their level. Not to lower herself to be a kid, but to look at kids at eye level and get in with them and to think what they were thinking. It's a very, very nice picture of a mom, because a lot of people can't say they had that.
I think part of the problem was that my mom was a child of divorce, and so her parents split up when she was 7. And she went to live with her dad, which is really unusual. She and her younger sister, her youngest sister, the middle sister, stayed with her mother. And she and her youngest sister, Aunt Gila, went to live with her dad and his mother. And I think she missed out on a lot of those early important activities with her mother. So when she became a mother, I think it became really, really important to her that she could give to us what she couldn't have. And I think in some ways maybe she got a chance to live out her fantasies for what she should have had through us.
Maybe so. Also, you're the oldest child, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. I'm the youngest child. So by the time they got around to me, everyone was a little bit older and a little bit more tired and a lot more busy because both of my parents worked. And I was more a child who hung out with his friends than with his parents. And I think that's, I don't want to say it's a loss, because it's not. I mean, a lot of people grew up that way. But now that I'm hearing your story, there's a great, tremendous warmth there that I can relate to. It's just really very nice.
Well, my mother was the stay-at-home mom, and like you said, a lot of the mothers in the neighborhood did work, and so our house became the stomping ground. All the kids in the neighborhood
Oh,
would come over to our house, and
yeah,
we
yeah.
didn't have a whole lot of money because mom didn't work, but my mother would always provide something. She used to make, and I bet you remember these, my grandmother used to sell Tupperware, and mom used to make us popsicles. Do you remember this with Kool-Aid?
Absolutely. The Tupperware popsicle, of course.
Yep. And so
Yeah.
she couldn't just give one to Chrissy and me. She had to give one to Billy and Jill and Michael and, all the kids that came over to our neighborhood because we had the mom who kind of was like the neighborhood mom. She looked
Right.
after everybody.
One of my great joys as a parent was finally making those Tupperware icicles for my kids.
Yep. I remember those.
Here, kids, this is something I used to have.
And when we were really lucky, instead of just Kool-Aid, we got Hawaiian Punch. Do you remember
Of course I do. I'm about to do the commercial now. How about a nice Hawaiian punch? Sure, boing. I am definitely a child of the 60s and a child of television.
that?
But let me ask you something now, something completely different. Your mother was a religious woman, and I think almost until the day she died, she was a religious woman. How did that affect her, and how was that important to her?
Oh, definitely. Until the day she died, she was a religious woman. And she ended up having some heart issues, but hers was acquired heart disease, unlike my son, who was born with heart problems. And so when I took her to the doctor because I was worried about the way she was breathing, we discovered she was in congestive heart failure. And then that was in October 2017. And she never fully recovered from that. So in January 2018, I took her back for some follow-up tests, and we discovered that she had breast cancer. And I'll never forget, as I was driving her back home, she said, "Anna, everybody dies from something." She said, "Don't feel sorry for me. I've lived 75 years, and I'm okay with that." And she said, "I'm going to go home to be with Jesus." So she never doubted. She never had a waver in her faith of being with Jesus. And I'm sure that's where she is.
Do you think that gave her strength to face the end?
Yeah, I think it did. She said to me, "I'm not afraid." She really wasn't afraid. She knew she would be reunited with her mother. And Paula, the middle sister, had passed away before my mom. And I think my mom, wanted to be reunited with her sister. It was really painful for her to lose her. And I knew she was excited about seeing her grandmother and her great-grandmother. It was her grandmother and great-grandmother who raised her when her parents were divorced because her dad was in the Navy. So he was out to sea, and she was left with her grandparents and her great-grandmother. So I know that because their faith was strong, I think her faith was strong. And she really wasn't afraid. You see a lot of people as they get older that they're afraid of dying and they really fight it. I think my mom kind of embraced where she was at the moment.
I think people are afraid, and I think people fight it until they decide not to fight it. And I've always imagined that my father, deep into his Alzheimer's, was lucid for one more moment and just said, "Now." We all have that fear because it's basically a fear of the unknown. We don't really know. We hope we know. We think we know. We're a little bit scared. What if we're wrong? What if we're right? We don't know. And at some point, I think people just get that strength at the end and say, you know what, whatever it is, I'm ready, and I'm just going to face it like I faced everything else, and we're clearly finished here. And I think for a lot of people, that's how it goes. And that's why they wait. You hear all these stories about people who wait to be alone. They wait till everybody leaves. Or in the case of your mother, she waited to come home, to be in a familiar place. And it was at home that she was able to let herself face that end.
Well, that's definitely true. She did not want to die in the hospital. She told me she wanted to go home. It was not easy for us to arrange transportation and everything. It ended up being a bit of a challenge, and so we were wheeling her into the house at midnight, and my sister was near the head of the gurney, and she said, "Look, Mom, look, we made it." She said, "You're home, open your eyes, look." And so my mother had been given some medication, so the transportation from the hospital to the house, which was a good 35 minutes, wouldn't be too difficult for her. And so I was surprised that she was actually able to open her eyes, but she did. She opened her eyes and she saw that she was inside the house. And my sister said, "We did it." And my mom said, "We did it." And that's the last time we heard her voice. So the next day she passed away. And I think you're right. I think that she knew she was home and she was where she wanted to be, and she was a very stubborn person. I think she's decided, this is it. I'm ready to go home. Let's do it.
This program is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a nonprofit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to uplift, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at www.hug-podcastnetwork.com for information about CHD, the hospitals that treat children with CHD, summer camps for CHD survivors, and much, much more.
I was 5 hours old when I had my first surgery.
Wow.
The only advice I can really give someone like that is to be there for your family.
This is life, and you have two choices. You either live it or you sit in a corner and cry.
I am Anna Jaworski and the host of Heart to Heart with Anna. Join us on Tuesdays at noon Eastern Time on Spreaker, our Blog Talk Radio. We'll cover topics of importance for the congenital heart defect community. Remember, my friends, you are not alone.
I am with Origami Owl Jewelry, and we personalize lockets. It has helped me heal so much by having that locket. I've had other friends and customers who have created lockets. They love their lockets, and they gift lockets to people who are bereaved or they're celebrating somebody.
To get your own Origami Owl locket, contact Nancy Jensen on Facebook or her website, nancydanceme.origamiOwl.com. You are listening to Heart to Heart with Michael. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our program, please send an email to Michael Lieben at michael@hearttoheartwithmichael.com. Now, back to Heart with Michael.
Anna, tell me about the projects that your mother started that you're going to finish.
My mom has a lot of projects that she started that she didn't finish. When my sister and I were going through the house, we couldn't believe how many different projects she had started. And one of the things that I gave my mother as a gift many years ago was some printed labels that say, handmade by Carol Daigneault. And I had given her a gift of, 25 or 50 of these embroidered labels. And when I was going through all of her stuff, I saw she had never used not one of them, Michael.
Oh.
She didn't use even one of them. But that's okay because I have them. And I found some Afghans that she had made where she had not hidden any of the strings. Remember those granny square Afghans I told you that I started with my crocheting? So Mom had made a bunch of those with scraps. Whenever she would make a project like a scarf or a hat and she'd have a little ball left, she'd put all these balls together. And when she had a basket full of balls, she would make these little granny squares. And then when she had enough squares, she would lay them all out on a bed, and then she would make them into an Afghan. So I found 4 of them where none of the strings were hidden. And I'm sure you can imagine tying all these knots with all these different colors. There are a lot of strings. So I decided, she has 3 grandchildren. I have 2 sons, and my sister has 1 daughter. And so I am finishing hiding all the strings for Mom, and I'm sewing those labels that I have with her name on it into each of the Afghans to give to each of the grandkids. And since I'm working so hard, I'm keeping the 4th one.
No, but don't you think now it's fortuitous that she didn't use the labels?
Well, yeah, because now we can label it and everybody can remember which Afghan it was that Mom gave them. I think that does make it a little bit more special. And also, anything I find of hers now that that I want to remember, my mother made this, I'm going to sew one of those little labels into it. So that when I'm gone, if the boys are like, why did Mom hold on to this? This is something me Mom made.
How will you celebrate your mother's life? Do you have any special traditions that you'll do to honor her?
Tomorrow, it will mark a month since my mother passed. So this is still really, really fresh. But I'll tell you what we've done already to honor my mother. My mother moved back from Savannah, where she lived with her sister for 8 years, and I live in Central Texas, but my mother is a 7th-generation Galvestonian. And Galveston was really, really an important part of her childhood. In fact, let me tell you a real quick story that she told us. We grew up hearing this story over and over. When she was a little girl and she was living in Galveston, and there was a very famous accident that happened called the Texas City Explosion. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I have not.
It was the largest industrial accident in the United States at the time. And this was in the 1940s. My Aunt Guyla was just a baby, and she was in her crib when this explosion occurred. And it happened 14 miles away from Galveston, but it could be felt in Galveston and even beyond that.
That's good.
It was huge, and parts of the ceiling came down. My grandmother grabbed Aunt Paula and grabbed my mom, and they hid under a table while the house shook. And Aunt Guyla was spared by the rails on her crib. Otherwise, the ceiling would have come right down on top of the baby and killed her. It was an amazing experience. And because of that, my mother was terrified of fire, because what happened was some oil rigs, I think, had exploded and caused massive damage in the Texas City area and then all the way out to Galveston and beyond.
Wow.
So, but Galveston was just a very important part of my mother's life. And she told my sister and me that she wanted to be buried with her people in Galveston. So we arranged for her to be buried in Galveston. You can see the seawall from the cemetery where she's buried. And my sister and her family, my brother-in-law Jesse and my niece Megan and my family, my husband and my sons Joseph and Alex, we all went to a restaurant that was, it's called Gatos, and it's right there on the water. You can see the beach from the restaurant. It's been in existence since 1911, so we're thinking, who knows, maybe Mom went there sometime. We don't know. She never talked about that specific restaurant, but we know that it was there when she was a little girl and when she was on the island. So we're planning on going back when the headstone is finished. We'll go back to Galveston as a family, all of us together. And maybe at Christmas time, there's a big festival in Galveston called Dickens on the Strand. I've always wanted to go. When Mom came back from Georgia, I told her I was going to take her, but she just wasn't quite up to walking on the boardwalk, so we didn't get a chance to do it. But I think maybe we'll try as a family to go and do something like that special together.
That sounds nice. You can do that every year. It's something you can go back to.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you had a loving and a wonderful childhood with a really loving and wonderful mother. And unfortunately, not a lot of people today can seem to make that claim. And I think you're lucky and you're special. And it also explains a lot about you and how you've been very good to us on this program and how you've been taking us by the hand and getting all of us through how to do this. And it's nice to know where it comes from. You have really strong roots, and your mother is really running deep inside you. And I want to conclude with something that our guest Philip Proctor said recently. He said, "We are remembered by the things we leave behind." And he was speaking about physical things. He was talking about his friend who, among other great talents, was also a carpenter and did a lot of handiwork. And all those things are still there to keep his friend alive. But I believe that we are also the things that are left behind. We are also the things that go on and we carry within us the essence of the people who have left us. And I can see that you do that very well. And a lot of us, try to do it and hope that we can do it. But as long as we keep them alive within us, they're really still here with us. And that concludes this episode of Heart to Heart with Michael. I want to thank Anna Jaworski for sharing her mother with us.
Well, thank you, Michael. It was an honor to be on your show.
Well, thank you. And I hope that her memorial has inspired those of you who are listening. So please join us at the beginning of the month for a brand new podcast. and I'll talk with you soon. Until then, remember, our loved ones are still with us as long as we keep their memories alive. Thank you.
Thank you again for joining us. We hope you have gained strength from listening to our program. Heart to Heart with Michael can be heard every Thursday at noon Eastern Time. We'll talk again next time when we'll share more stories.